The Switch 2 just came out, and there's so much to be excited about with this brand new console. And while everyone's been having an absolute blast getting their console on launch day and experiencing a brand new Mario Kart for the first time in 11 years, I've spent the entire weekend playing Welcome Tour. In just a few days, I've completely 100%ed the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, grinding through every single area, spamming through every quiz, and clearing every single minigame so you don't have to. Nintendo took my $10, and to get it back, I'll be ranking every single minigame. There are a shocking number of them, and several of these have their own remixes and alternate versions for a total of 51 different variants. Today, I'll be ranking all 20 of the core minigames based on how they incorporate the Nintendo Switch 2's features, but most importantly, how fun they are. Of course, I'll also be considering each minigame's remixes if they're available and factoring those into the overall ranking, so you won't miss a thing. With that out of the way, some of these minigames are surprisingly good, while some of them are, well, disappointing to say the least. So let's get right into the ranking, starting with number 20, the very worst minigame. For the worst game in Welcome Tour, we have Speedolf. When I play this game, I almost never have fun, and that's because the controls are kind of finicky. When you try and play fast, it does not feel natural at all. It's very inconsistent, and the ball often goes flying or practically doesn't move at all when you're just attempting a normal shot. In theory, this game is a good way to show off the mouse controls. However, the speed element is where it falls short. I don't think the mouse controls pair well with that faster pace, and honestly, I think this game would have done way better if it was just like actual golf, with the goal being to have the least amount of strokes and actually being able to time your shots. While there are 4 different versions of this game, each with their own course, I would probably hold that against this minigame because I don't enjoy playing it at all. This one could have been a hole-in-one, but it failed to even par the course. Moving on to the next minigame is Guess the Frame Rate. There's really nothing inherently wrong with this minigame. It functions exactly as it's intended. However, it definitely feels a lot more like a demo than a game at times. If you couldn't tell, the way this minigame works is a video will play on screen, and you have to then guess how many frames per second the video was played in. It's a neat concept, and in the earlier levels, it's fairly simple. However, to be honest, as you get further in, it becomes insanely difficult. I genuinely feel like it's a coin flip at times. Like, sure, the difference between 60 and 120 hertz is a lot for gaming, I understand that, but if I'm being shown a 1 to 2 second clip, even with replays, that's very hard to work with. I can pretty easily tell the difference between 60 and 120 frames per second when I'm playing an actual game, but just from a slight visual, yeah, I just kinda winged it. It's also more difficult in Guess the Frame Rate 2, which compares frame rates that are even more similar. So yeah, honestly, I do like that this is in the game because it's kind of interesting, but as a game itself, I definitely wouldn't say it's particularly fun or rewarding, especially when I feel like my guesses are a shot in the dark after round 3. I genuinely have no desire to replay this one. LCD Pixel Hunt is another one that feels way more like a demo than a game. You have to find 3 moving pixels on the Switch 2's LCD screen, and it basically shows off the Switch 2's increased resolution in handheld mode, with each pixel being very, very tiny. Like with the Guess the Frame Rate, I think it makes complete sense to include this game in the package, because it does exactly what it's intended to do, but it's also not particularly fun as an actual game. Maybe it's just because I'm absolutely cracked at it, but my entire experience with this minigame was opening it up, clearing it in a few seconds to earn all 3 medals, and then never intending to touch it again. Essentially, yup, that was definitely LCD Pixel Hunt. The exact same thing happened with the alternate version too, but this time the pixels slowly drift instead of moving in their own pattern. Again, this is definitely one of the more tech demo-y games in this collection, and it also has its place, just not the top of this minigame ranking. Next is 4K Pixel Hunt, which is technically its own minigame and not just a remix of LCD Pixel Hunt. That being said, it is the exact same concept. This time you're trying to find 5 hidden pixels in a 4K aspect ratio. And for a bit of insight, that means that each pixel is 1 in over 8 million. This is kind of why 4K Pixel Hunt is higher. Having to track down the smallest possible object on a screen through slight movements or drifts in the alternate version, it really shows how incredible the graphics are and how much more powerful the Switch 2 really is. I was playing this on a 4K monitor where the pixels are much smaller than on a TV, and I had to practically lean all the way in squinting because the pixels were just so tiny that they were essentially invisible. Kind of like how they're probably invisible on your screen right now because I had to record this footage in 1080p. And that's because, well... Number 16 is Scrape Off, and this is a game that I have a love-hate relationship with. The concept is that you have to use your mouse functionality to scrape off a stain. Shocking, right? But as simple as it sounds, I found this game to be difficult as hell. It felt like no matter how hard I scraped, I could not get this gunk off the screen in the allotted time. Seriously, I spent almost 15 minutes violently scraping my Joy-Con against my desk trying to remove this virtual grime. It would get to the point where my desk and everything on it would start shaking like there was an earthquake happening. At this point, I was ready to rank this as the worst minigame in all of Welcome Tour. But then a strategy arose. By rotating the Joy-Con sideways and quickly scrubbing it up and down like a sponge, I was able to move with incredible speed, earning all 3 medals in both the initial version and the second version, which features an even more stubborn stain. Was this an intrinsically fun experience? Absolutely not. But I also have to admit that after this journey I went through, this was one of the more satisfying minigames to complete. That being said, any joy I got from this game was something I personally earned and definitely did not reflect the quality of this minigame itself. 7 out of 10, too much scraping. Breaststroke Floaty Frustration is another very simple minigame. There's only one version of it and it lasts just a few seconds. It kind of reminds me of the rowing minigame from Mario Kart 8. However, it's obviously only one player, and this one actually uses mouse controls instead of motion controls. You can also submerge yourself under the water temporarily to travel faster, which is pretty neat. Honestly though, this minigame kind of feels like it was just slotted in at the end to show off the dual mouse functionality. Like, it's fun, but there's also really not a whole lot to it. I can't just factor in what features are shown off. I have to actually consider how they're shown off and also how fun the actual minigame is. With this minigame, it's not really replayable at all. Once you earn every medal, like, do you really want to keep testing how fast you can swim in a straight line? Probably not. Next is Slot in the Shapes, and this is one that initially caught my eye during the reveal trailer for Welcome Tour. You can take a variety of shapes and rotate them and match them in the right hole. I don't really have anything bad to say about this game itself. It's a decent minigame, the controls are good, and the visuals are nice. However, it's also literally a baby game, like we're matching shapes to their proper hole. I've been doing this since I was a toddler. The thing that's the most shocking about this minigame is that it's one of the very last ones, despite being probably the easiest one out of them all. So yeah, it definitely feels out of place, and it's also not really challenging. Sure, the other variant has the holes moving, which requires a bit more timing, I guess, but if you're truly struggling with this one, it might be time to go back to preschool. Here we have Stunt Driving, another game that shows off the mouse functionality. You move the mouse back and forth to move your car, and you can even tilt the car on its side by tilting the controller. It's pretty fun the first few times you play it, but also definitely lacks a lot of personality. The visuals are pretty bad. It kind of looks like they just had an intern mock some stuff up in Blender. It's actually funny how different the visuals in this game are sometimes. Like, there's one demo where you're riding on a motorcycle and it looks so beautiful, and this just looks like the complete opposite. I'm not even a snob for graphics, but this game also isn't too replayable either. Sure, there are 2 different courses, a basic course and a more difficult course, but even with those courses, there's no variation. You're getting the same track every time, depending on what you select. I don't know, this game just feels like it could have been made like in Game Builder Garage or something. It's decent, but it's also just nothing to write home about. Number 12 is Guess the Angle, which is a really interesting minigame. It doesn't even use a controller. Instead, you have to take the Switch 2 out of the dock and you'll be shown an angle that you have to replicate with the console's kickstand. It's very precise and there's really nothing more rewarding than landing on the exact angle displayed. The second version is even cooler because it just tells you what angle it wants instead of actually showing it. If you failed geometry, you might hate this one, but personally, I think this is really cool. My biggest gripe is definitely the replayability or lack thereof. If this was like a game in Mario Party where the player with the most accurate angle wins, that would be so sick. But with how it plays in Welcome Tour, it's really this sort of man versus machine type minigame, and there really isn't a lot of incentive to play it past the first few medals. That being said, it's definitely one of the coolest ideas in this game, and the fact that the Switch 2 is even compatible of detecting the angle it's tilted at is just so sick. Find the Strongest Rumble is a game that does an excellent job showing off the power of HD Rumble 2. The fact that you have this much precision with detecting where a vibration is coming from is really cool, and on my first attempt, I was able to get extremely close to the actual rumble. However, the biggest thing that's holding this minigame back is that I didn't have as much fun with the additional variants. The second version has 2 axes, so you have to move both right to left and up and down, and that definitely makes the precision much harder. Maybe it's a skill issue, but this one had me second guessing myself a lot. It was very hard to detect the exact location, and when I thought it was hard enough, the third version added in decoy rumbles to throw you off. Personally, I had a lot more fun with the first version, but maybe my opinion of this game comes down to preference rather than that being a bad minigame. That being said, I do genuinely feel like this was a very average experience, so that's why I'm putting it right in the middle of this ranking. Entering the top 10, first up is Feel the Shape. You're shown a bunch of possible shapes, and you have to determine which one you're feeling with HD Rumble, despite not being able to actually see it. There's this cool process of elimination involved. My strategy was to test the sections with discrepancies to rule out possible shapes, and I was able to get all 3 medals using this method. It's pretty fun, and the second version replaces the shape with letters, so my strategy definitely needed a bit of rework, but once again, I was able to get all 3 medals. I think this one is fun, but I also think it would work way better in a game like Mario Party. There's a lot of randomness involved because the shapes change, and I think this kind of chaos is perfect for multiplayer. It's a good concept, but it also really doesn't benefit from the fact that it's a single player experience. So again, I think this one's pretty average, which is why it's at number 10. Next is Balloon Hunt, a very straightforward game, but also a very interesting one. You have to track down and shoot balloons, using the left Joy-Con to walk around and the right Joy-Con to aim. It's very akin to how you would move and aim in a traditional shooter, and that's honestly why this one is so high up. Sure, the visuals are very basic and the concept itself is also very basic, but seeing just the idea of a fully functioning FPS with mouse support on a Nintendo console is so exciting. I would love to see Nintendo take on their very own competitive first-person shooter with the Joy-Cons as mouse controllers. I mean, we're already seeing what they can do with Metroid Prime 4's mouse support. Imagine that kind of precision in a more competitive setting. My biggest gripe with this game is that you can't customize the sensitivity. I tend to prefer using a lower sensitivity for shooters, and I would barely move the Joy-Con and overshoot very often. The additional versions are also cool. In this one, you have to pop 2 balloons, which you can actually do with 1 shot. And the third version, you have to pop 30 balloons. However, you can pop 3 at once by hitting a bomb attached to them. Again, this requires a lot of precision, which is cool, but if we're going to get more shooting games with mouse support in the future, an option to change sensitivity is a must. Color the Shapes is yet again another minigame that uses mouse controls, and I really appreciate its precision. You essentially just have to fill in a different shape, be it a triangle, star, flowers, or a snake. And if you go outside the lines, you lose. However, if you're too careful, you won't get any medals because of time loss. Now look, I know I dogged on a certain shape-themed game earlier for being a baby game, and you could definitely make a similar comparison here. I mean, you're literally just coloring in the lines, but there's just something so oddly satisfying here, especially if you move fast enough. Some of these later levels are actually fairly difficult, and if you do finish your drawing, you're left with a pretty cool image featuring some vibrant colors. I don't know, there's just something about this minigame that's so fun. I think the fact that it's such a simple concept in this case makes it more approachable than boring. Don't let the simplicity trick you into thinking this one's easy, because I don't even want to say how long these flowers took me to fill in. Regardless, I genuinely had a fun time playing this one, because it does what it wants to, and it does it well. So in my opinion, this is one of the better minigames. Number 7 is Match the Rumble. It's just a match 2 with 12 cards. However, rather than matching images, you're matching vibrations that utilize the HD Rumble feature. Once you get a feel for the various sounds and rumbles, it's very fun, and given the nature of the Match 2 game, there's just enough luck to keep this one interesting. It's really fun to go back and try to interact with the fewest amount of cards possible. Any minigame or demo that showed off the new HD Rumble 2 left me very impressed with just how detailed these rumble effects can get, and I seriously hope that this is actually used in a lot of games, rather than an oversight 99% of the time like we saw with HD Rumble on the Switch. That being said, of the games that showcased HD Rumble 2, this one was definitely my favorite, because on top of doing a great job showing off the mechanic, it added a fun twist to a very basic and already pretty fun game. Next, we have a game that was surprisingly difficult. Open the GL and GR locks. This game showcased the Pro Controller's GL and GR buttons by having you map them to A and B. Then it would force you to hold down and press different button combinations, many of which would be borderline impossible without these new button options. To be honest, seeing the game prompt you to press A or B and having to press the paddles on the grips of your controller feels really unnatural at first. However, I think that's why this minigame is so great. It forces you to become comfortable with this new button mapping possibility, and also just the general idea behind these new buttons. I thought the first lock patterns were hard, and the second version was way longer, and then the third version, on top of being longer, also shuffled the pattern, giving me a run for my money. On top of its steep learning curve, I really appreciated the fact that this minigame perfectly showcased the Switch 2's Pro Controller's new additions, and I love the mix of both challenging gameplay and actually forcing you to learn. This really feels like everything a Welcome Tour minigame should be. Now we're entering the top 5. These games don't just show off the features of the Switch 2, these are games that left an impression for being fun and replayable as actual games, not just tech demos. First up is Speed Maze. This game is simple in concept, but also fast-paced and very punishing, making it very easy to replay. On top of that, each maze is even more difficult than the last, with stage 4 being absolutely ridiculous. This one took me forever to earn the medal for, but when I did, it was very satisfying. I love this minigame, and again, I love the precision that mouse mode offers. Seeing it implemented with a game this strict and demanding is just so awesome. I feel like this is just one of the minigames that you can just pick up and understand and start having fun immediately. And watching myself slowly start to get the hang of this game as I progressed through each level felt extremely rewarding. Next is Clickquick, another mouse game that features really simple yet really difficult gameplay. This is essentially just a human benchmark for precision and aim, and as the name implies, it's very quick. If you want to earn every medal, you need to kind of assume you hit a target before it even registers. Flicking the Joy-Con as a mouse to take down targets is very satisfying, and like with Speed Maze, there's 4 different variants, each with an increase in challenge, whether it be multiple targets, moving targets, or even multiple moving targets. Again, there isn't a ton to add about this game. It's very easy to understand, but that's part of what makes it so fun. So I genuinely think that this one earns its spot at number 4. Number 3 is Facial Impressions 5 Faces Challenge. When I saw there was going to be a camera minigame in this game, I was practically dreading it because I genuinely had no clue what to expect. I didn't really know what the Switch 2's camera was capable of, so it was hard to imagine what a minigame that uses it would even look like. However, I was definitely impressed with what we ended up getting. Facial Impressions takes the Switch 2's camera feature and does a perfect job showcasing it. You're given what is essentially an emoji, and you have to replicate it using your own face. The console will then translate your actual facial expression into your own emoji and show you how it compares to the one on screen. While the concept itself is straightforward, the technology behind all of this is very interesting and cool to see. This feels like something you would expect to see on a traditional mobile device, like an iPad or smartphone. Seeing it on the Switch 2 seriously left its own impression on me. So yeah, there's only one version of this minigame, but it's just so cool, and I would love to see the camera utilized in more Switch 2 games. Like, seeing this in Mario Party would be so sick. I don't know how much I'll be replaying this one, but it was easily one of the more memorable games from Welcome Tour, despite my initial hesitation. As I was playing this game and was thinking about this ranking, trying to decide which games I had the most fun with, one game always came to mind. And that is the very first game I played, Dodge the Spiked Balls. You get in your little UFO, you move around with the Joy-Con mouse, and you dodge the spike balls for as long as you can. In my opinion, this is the most replayable game in all of Welcome Tour. And that's because you're not just trying to get a fast time, you're trying to survive for as long as possible. No matter how well you do, you can always improve. There's no finish line, just survival. Every second longer is a new high score. The gameplay itself is absolutely bonkers. It starts off fairly reasonable and in just a few seconds quickly turns into a complete bullet hell. By the time you feel comfortable with the concept, the second version completely throws you off by forcing you to collect falling stars while still dodging at ridiculous speeds. And just when you think you've become one with your little UFO friend, the third variant introduces a second UFO that you control with the left Joy-Con. The fourth version is completely and utterly ridiculous. Anything and everything you thought you knew about this game, thought you were comfortable with, Dodge the Spiked Balls 4 takes that and completely slaps you in the face with Nightmare Mode. This doesn't just haunt your dreams, it haunts your very nightmares, embodying fear and chaos itself. What looks like it could easily be a simple mobile game is a surprisingly tight and precise experience, with brutal, punishing gameplay completed by its shockingly deep HD rumble use and haptic feedback as you dodge and collect stars. This isn't just a good minigame, it's a great game, and I could not think of a more perfect minigame to launch you into your Welcome Tour journey. Alright, you're probably wondering, what could the number one minigame possibly be at this point? Well, of all the minigames I've played, one immediately stood out the most. When I played this game, I immediately knew this one was my favorite. But realistically, I didn't think it would make it to the very top of this list. Past my own biases, surely there would be another game that I would have to declare the very best. Right? Well, as I went through each minigame I had played, there really wasn't a minigame that I felt strongly about. Something that was obviously the best one. Because when I thought about it, my heart was right all along. Touch 10 is genuinely the best minigame in the Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. In one of this game's quizzes, I remember seeing a tidbit about how the Switch 2 touchscreen could register 10 different interactions at once. My initial response was pure confusion. I had no clue how that would work or what that could possibly be used for. But Touch 10 does a perfect job demonstrating this concept. You place your console down, facing straight up, and you're presented with a bunch of different patterns that kind of resemble a game like Twister. Well, that's because this game is Twister, with your fingers. You're given a color, and you have to place your finger on that color. Then you're given a new color, and you have to place a different finger on that color, without letting go of the previous one. If you manage to have all 10 fingers on screen at once, you win. While it seems easy, this game is so hard, you have to calculate the best move constantly to even stand a chance. Otherwise, your hands are getting turned into pretzels. To me, this is the perfect Welcome Tour game. It's innovative, challenging, fun, and it also is the perfect game to introduce the player to its concept. I went from, huh, that's weird, to, oh my god, this is literally the coolest idea I've ever seen in a video game, in just a matter of seconds. On top of that, because of the randomized nature of the given colors, it's very replayable. There's even 2 additional modes, one with completely randomized circles, and one with 7 different colors in this rainbow-esque pattern. This game is just an absolute blast. So yes, this is my favorite minigame, and I'm biased. But you know what else? It's also just a really well-made minigame, and I can confidently say that this is the best game in all of Welcome Tour. But let me know what minigame is your favorite. Maybe you hate Touch 10 because you're built like Wreck-It Ralph and the game becomes try not to touch 10 at once. Realistically, you might not even own Welcome Tour at all on the Switch 2 for that matter. But regardless, let me know what you thought about this ranking down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and you want more Nintendo Switch 2 content, be sure to check out this video where I go over 100 facts that you didn't know about the Nintendo Switch. Alright, see you guys next time. Bye!